We'll do the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that this land on which the Sarnia Police Service operates is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Odawa, Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as an Anishinaabe. It is through connection of the Anishinaabe with the spirit of the land, water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together as treaty people, we have shared responsibility to act with respect for the environment that sustains all life, protecting the future for those generations to come. I'll ask the board if anyone has declarations of conflict of interest. None. And can I have a mover for the approval of the agenda? And okay, so the election of the chair to the Sarnia Police Services Board for 2025 is done under Section 36 of the Community Safety and Policing Act. It's time to call for nominations for chair and vice chair for the Sarnia Police Services Board. First of all, we will do the chair. I'll now ask for nominations to name a chair.
I nominate Paul Risman.
Do I have a seconder? Anne Marie. Are there any other nominations? See none. Nominations are now closed then. Paul, do you accept this nomination?
Yes, I do, Madam Secretary, and I'll just make a couple of remarks if I might. So good morning, everyone, and thank you to my colleagues for entrusting me with your confidence to serve for another year as chair of the board. I thank each one of you for your service to this board to ensure that we have adequate and effective policing in Sarnia. One of our critical responsibilities as a police service board is to ensure that we have excellent leadership, and we would agree that we find that in Chief Davis and Deputy Chiefs Hanson and Vinsickle. This is an exciting time for the Sarnia Police Service as it continues to modernize and implement the relatively new Community Safety and Policing Act. And in 2025, we look forward to several challenges and opportunities. This is the last year of our 3-year strategic plan. And in the second half of the year, we will begin to engage with the community to determine what their priorities are for the next number of years. Negotiations continue with our uniformed and civilian members. We anticipate a fair and equitable agreement that will allow us to attract and retain great people. And we look forward to working with the city on a site selection process for the new police facility and to engaging with an architect on the design for a new facility. Finally, I would just say that funding reserves allow us to mitigate financial risk, and we continue to be reminded of the need to ensure that our budgets provide for this moving forward. We have an excellent police service in Sarnia, and I acknowledge and thank them for their work. And I appreciate the shared vision that we have on the board and trust that this will allow us to have a productive year as we continue to implement our strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I now ask for a motion to name a vice chair. Charlene.
I nominate Kelly Ash as vice chair.
Also.
Seconder, Christy. Are there any other nominations? Nominations are now closed. Kelly, would you accept the nomination as vice chair?
Yes, I'd be honored to that.
Would you like to say a few words?
Just a couple. I'm not as prepared as Paul is, even though I was warned to be. It has been one of my greatest accomplishments serving as vice chair on this for the last 3 years, and the accomplishments that we've completed together. And there's so much more work to do, so I'm honored. So thank you for your trust to continue and everything he said.
I think Kelly, your passion and your commitment and staying for you, of course, to the board is really outstanding and quite impressive. So I am thrilled to be part of the team that works with the service to we listen to our next phase.
Thank you, Shirley. Well, I'd like to adjourn the meeting, but we'll continue on to item number 7, and I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the December 12th meeting. So that's Board Member Gillis, seconded by Board Member Ash. Any questions or comments on those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, and that's approved. And then that brings us to item number 8, a happy moment in the meeting, and I'll turn it over to Chief Davis.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. What up, Ken? One of the pieces that we like to do is recognize the success of our members and the many individuals that make up the Sarnia Police Service and make it a successful organization. Today we have the pleasure of introducing Staff Sergeant Kent Jamieson. Kent Jamieson was born and raised in South Porcupine, Ontario. He began his law enforcement career with the Timmins Police Service, where he served for 5 years, spending 4 years in General Patrol and 1 year in the Criminal Investigation Division. Kent also has fond memories from his years in Timmins spent as a member of the Ceremonial Mounted Unit. In 2015, Kent and his family relocated to Sarnia for a new opportunity with the Sarnia Police Service. In 2017, Kent was transferred into CID, where he developed a strong passion for helping victims and investigating serious crimes against people. He also honed his writing skills as the primary search warrant writer for several major cases. In 2021, Kent was promoted to the rank of sergeant, where he continued to serve as a detective for an additional 2 years. After 6 years in CID, Kent transitioned back to General Patrol in 2023 as an acting staff sergeant, and presently now in 2025 as a fully confirmed staff sergeant. Beyond his police work, Kent has been an active member of his community. From 2018 to 2024, he served as a director on the executive board for Victim Services Sarnia-Lambton. Kent also enjoys volunteering for local groups and events, including serving as Meals on Wheels driver to provide meals to elderly individuals and chaperoning many public school field trips. Kent's greatest pride lies in his family. His wife, Sasha, has been a steadfast supporter through every step of his life and career since they first met and fell in love. Together, they have 2 children, daughter Jacoby and son Declan, who inspire him daily to be the best parent and person he can be. Kent values the joy and motivation his family brings to his life, making them his most cherished accomplishment. As he surpasses the midpoint of his policing career, Kent is deeply grateful for the many opportunities the Sarnia Police Service has provided him. He's especially thankful for the trust placed in him by the senior leadership team to fulfill such an important leadership role within the organization. Kent remains fully committed to ensuring the safety of the community and leading by example to maintain the high standards of service and integrity that the Sarnia Police Service upholds. And I just want to comment that the rank of staff sergeant, much like the rank of sergeant, is a critical role inside any organization. That he's actually right in the middle of the problem sandwich. He has to deal with the issues at the front line. He also has to deal with the senior management. So that staff sergeant position is a critical role. It's not an easy role to obtain. We only have 6 positions in our entire organization, and Kent is. We're pleased to have promoted Kent after a competition into his new rank role. So congratulations. Rika, you want to do a picture over there?
So I'll be meeting back to order for those that are watching online or watching the recording. We had a minor spill that we had to deal with, but I think we're back on track now. So we'll move to item number 9 on the agenda. This relates to board policies. Board members will see that there were several policies that are being presented for adoption today. These are mostly revised policies to align with the Community Safety and Policing Act. Some of them were very minor changes, just the reference to the act itself. There are a few new policies. When we did our survey for the Inspector General of Policing, we observed that we had done quite well in implementing the CSPA. requirements, but there were a few gaps in our policies, and so those address those as well. And before I open it up for a motion and discussion, I just want to note that the two last policies in the package, that's LE 045 and PO 003, I'm going to ask that we take those off the list for adoption today. They will come back to our February meeting. There have been a few more changes to those policies. So really, we're just looking at the ones that begin with an AI or an LE. I'll also mention that it's hard to see, but LE 008 is not being revised. It's actually being rescinded because that policy content is being covered off in other policies. So my appreciation to to Carrie on staff who has helped us with this policy development. And what I'll do now is I know there will be a couple questions, but just to get it on the floor, can I have a motion to rescind the policies as indicated and to approve the new policies? Board Member Ash moves, seconded by Board Member McRoberts, and I'll open it up for discussion and or questions. Board Member Gillis.
Yes, I don't have the actual policy in front of me. I left my notes at home, but it has to do with the hate. There was two: hate bias and hate propaganda, I do believe.
So the hate propaganda, that's the LE 008, that's been rescinded.
It's the one part.
So we don't need to worry about that. But the LE 007, the hate bias motivated crime and hate propaganda offenses. And as a reference to the package, that is on page number, starts on page 38. And we chatted ahead of time. I think you wanted to draw attention to Article 4 of that policy, where it says the chief shall ensure that the services works where possible with community organizations, school boards, victims organizations, and social service agencies to prevent the repetition of hate propaganda offenses and hate or bias motivated crimes, and to counter the activities of organized hate groups in the community.
So I did want to add something else to that, and that is places of worship. As we've seen right across Canada, there's been an uptick on attacks on places of worship, particularly synagogues, but over the past few years, there's been church burnings, that kind of thing. So I want to make sure that we've got that, even though it's not been a problem in our city. It's always good to be proactive in your policies, and I would ask the board if they would include that slight revision to cover all.
Okay, so I'll take that as a motion then from
Yes.
Board Member Gillis to add places of worship to the list of organizations that the chief will ensure that the service works with. Board Member Ash moves that amendment. Any discussion on the amendment itself to that policy? Call for the vote, approval for that amendment to the policy. All those in favor? Okay, so that's amended. Are there any other questions or discussion items with respect to the policies?
I did.
Yeah.
With regard to the patrols, there's a terminology in there called that stated directed patrols. And I was having a conversation with the vice chair before that. And I was wondering if someone could address that. What is specifically a directed patrol as opposed to a patrol?
So there's different terminology for essentially some similar activities. Directed patrol would be a focused deployment of units to patrol a particular area of high need or under a particular project or some sort of a focus that we're working on. So it will be within a geographic location, directed activities.
Okay. I thought maybe it was when we were escorting various oversized vehicles or something like that. But now, so thanks for the clarification.
No trouble.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the policies?
I shouldn't say that.
Okay, then I'll call for the vote. So to rescind the policies as indicated, to approve the policies as indicated, once again with the exception of LE 045 and PO 003, which will be deferred to the February meeting. So we have the motion on the floor. All those in favor? Okay, those policies are approved. So thank you very much for that. Thank you to the board members that spent the time to read through the policies. We own the policies as a board and we're responsible for them. And I know that it was a very lengthy package as a result to this meeting, but I think we're better off for it. So now I'll move to item number 10 on the agenda, and that's the monthly operation update. And I think that's done by our deputy chiefs.
Good morning, I'll start off. So on this board report, you'll find there's a heat map that is provided on the very second page. This heat map is an illustration of the distribution and intensity of the calls for service for just December alone. You'll see there's been 2,616 occurrences recorded between December 1st and December 31st. You'll notice it's color coded. Each point on a region is given a color, and the darker the color is the greater intensity. So when you look at that map, you'll be able to see where the concentration of most of our call volume is happening. So Councillor Gillis, through the chair, you'll know that that map will actually help with our directed patrols. We can see where the problems are, and that's where the units will typically be sent to. Okay?
That makes sense.
So that's, I don't think you've seen that before, so you'll start to see more often of these heat maps in these reports. The next item I'm going to talk about is we had in December 2 individuals who were from the UK that were arrested doing fraudulent activity. They were going to a neighborhood, specifically they targeted an address on Franklin Road, Franklin Avenue, and they posed as contractors. They were offered to do some eavesdrop cleaning. Turned out afterwards they went to the homeowner and said that their eavesdrops were damaged and that they could fix them for a price. The homeowner did a little bit of their own research and found out that they didn't even do any work, but they were asking for money. So Uniform Patrol ended up arresting 2 individuals for fraud. It was learned that they actually hit a lot of addresses in that area, but regardless, they were held for bail and then they were subsequently pled guilty and were deported back to the UK. So it's a good win for us. They were brand new into Canada, and they first hit Sarnia and that was their last stop. So it's a good thing for us. Next item is a drug investigation. I'm sorry.
Question, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
To the
Board
chair,
Member
to you.
Gillis.
Deputy Chief Hansen, is that unusual for our jurisdiction to deport someone? I didn't realize we had power to do.
Yes, it's not common. Certainly, CBSA doesn't necessarily report deportations, but for us to be involved and have something that was done that quick, I think it's rare, but it's a good sign of the times. If we can actually get rid of criminals, I think that's a good thing for us.
Yes, and it speaks to the fact that we are a border community, and this is a good tool to have. So thank you.
Absolutely. The next item is the major case action team concluded an investigation in early December with the execution of a search warrant and multiple arrests at a home on Victoria Street in Sarnia. As a result of that, the search warrant was executed with members of our emergency response team, and a quantity of drugs, controlled drugs and substances, along with Canadian currency, U.S. currency, and bear spray were seized. Several people were arrested and face charges currently for that. And then in the month of December, we initiated a retail theft blitz with the Ontario Retail Council. This blitz saw us over a 4-day period working with loss prevention officers, where we had officers that would respond to in-progress shoplifting, and that proved successful. Over the 4 days, I can tell you that we arrested 13 people, we laid 23 charges, arrested 3 individuals on outstanding arrest warrants, and 1 specific individual was found to have a significant quantity of drugs. This individual had 13.3 grams of methamphetamine, 37.47 grams of fentanyl, and just under $900 in cash. This individual remains in custody, charged with a raft of drug offenses. So that's some really important drugs off our streets, and a significant dealer still in custody. So that's a good win for our community. And then the next item I'm going to talk about is a shopping cart blitz, the shopping cart initiative that we did. So through the month of December, we started a project targeting shopping carts. Now, I'll tell you, shopping carts is a visual representation of some of the decay in our society. We equate it to the broken window theory. When you see somebody walking down the street with a shopping cart full of stuff that isn't groceries, you know, that shopping cart is just a visible sign of something that's more wrong. So we decided to target shopping carts, and we were doing a phased approach where we would initially go and communicate the having these shopping carts, if they're not used for shopping, is actually a possession of stolen property or a theft offense. So we're engaging them, talking to them. Those same people, if we encounter them again, we would give them a formal caution. We had a flyer made up, and we would give them a caution, tell them that they're in possession of stolen property. We would take their name, and they would go into our report would be submitted. The third time we encountered them, they would actually face criminal charges. We would seize the cart, and then we would return it back to the manufacturer, to the store. Yet, so far, we haven't really had to charge anybody. We have had a couple of roundups. We utilized our auxiliary members through the month of December on 2 different occasions, and we rounded up just over 50 shopping carts and returned them. So for your awareness, those shopping carts are worth about $500 a piece. They're quite expensive. So for the retailers, that's a pretty big expense. And certainly those costs are not being paid by the retailers. They're being passed on to the consumer. So I think we've taken some criticism from the community about this project. But again, it's the broken window theory. This is a symptom of something broader, and we have the capability to actually see what's going on. And we can address these people and have an opportunity to interact with them, look for support services. If they're unhoused individuals, we can get them, connected. And so again, this is just one way of approaching a bigger issue.
Ryan?
Yeah, you go first.
Sorry.
Okay, so we can have everybody.
Everybody.
Go ahead, board member Scott.
I was just curious, in terms of the composite of folks that you encountered, what were some of the reasons behind them using carts?
Well, so a lot of the carts are being used to house their personal property. Like the unhoused people don't have.
Unhomed
I'm sorry.
and unhomed
Yes,
folks. Okay.
typically. And again, there's also the belief that individuals who are going throughout the neighborhoods to steal, they can't carry as much in their arms as they could in a cart. So certainly our belief is that the carts are being used also to move stolen property within the community as well.
Board member Roberts.
Thank you through the chair. I think it's pivotal that you mention the auxiliary staff went out to collect them because everybody's, what are we paying them to go get it? That's why Chief brought them in, right? So that we could have this kind of work done by people that are not. So that's key, and that's a great use for them. And for anybody that wants to complain about it, this is a step forward. There's less to carry stolen goods in. There's less bulk around the tents. There's less of all of that, and the city looking trash. So thank you.
Absolutely. Board member Gills.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the Deputy Chief again. I was really impressed with this program. When you first introduced it, I wasn't really sure exactly how you would make it work. But as you described, shopping carts left in ditches, on the sidewalks, abandoned, is indicative of urban decay. Very similar to, as you said, the broken window, but also massive graffiti everywhere. So the best way to handle it is to get it out as soon as you can. And just the fact that you utilize this new unit that we implemented and given you the money for really shows the taxpayers that you're putting your money, the money that they can entrust us, you're putting it to good use. And even though people will find it a bit odd that we're picking up shopping carts, no one else is doing it. And they just, as you say, they have multi-use purposes, but they really are indicative of urban decay. And that's the last thing you want to be shouting out to the world when you're a border community and when you're trying to entice people to come and invest and come and check out your community as a tourist opportunity. Anything that you can do, any little bit, makes a huge difference. So kudos to you and bravo to the auxiliary unit that ferreted this all out and dumped it in the trucks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the comments, and I would also echo a very proactive and approach and very progressive in terms of, you're not charging the first time, you're using education means. So I think that's very good. Thank you.
I'll turn over to Deputy Nancy.
And board member.
I'm sorry.
So as well as everybody else has said, but I think a bigger picture is that it shows the community that we're not ignoring everything. Like, we're not focused on the issues that have taken up the majority of our time. We are still doing community policing, and I think that that's important. Even though we took some heat but we're going to take heat no matter what we do, right? But I think it was a good show of involvement in the community. So
I will say that some of the concern was that we would target people who actually use the carts to get their groceries from A to B. And certainly that is not the intent point. We're not targeting those people. It's meant for the ones that are actually, well, a good example, when we were marching in the Remembrance Day parade, we had one unhoused individual walking past the parade with his cart full of belongings. That's a visible eyesore. And certainly, that person is in a difficult situation, but again, that cart belongs to somebody else. And just seeing that in the community is not very good. The public don't want to see that. So yeah, thank you for your comments. I'll turn over to Deputy Chief Ansico for the rest of this report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, to the board. One thing that I'd like to highlight with respect to this report is, as we go through it each month, is I want to draw the attention to the interoperability of all of the units that work together within the Sarnia Police Service. The items that the deputy highlights are tied to the Criminal Investigations Division, potentially initiated by the Operations Division, supported by this division, supported everywhere. There's no silos within the organization, and I think that's one of my biggest takeaways from putting this report together this month. And with the assistance of Inspector Vosberg and Murphy, we collaborate together to bring all this information together, and then we just can't parse it out into, well, this is his area and this is my area and this is their area. So just wanted to highlight that. And it kind of leads into my very first point that I'd like to reference, was the training with the emergency response team. Now, the emergency response team, I'll foreshadow a little bit, we'll have a presentation next month, so I don't want to steal too much of their thunder and what they're doing for our organization, but certainly they are responding to incidents that are initiated through the other areas of the service. So one thing that's critically important for them is the training. And we highlighted this year that we were grateful to community members, businesses, private individuals who assist us in that training. We need to create dynamic environments for our emergency response team to train in, because if they continuously just train in their training center, the muscle memory takes over. They know that I need to take 2 steps before I make a left turn. There's going to be a door. We're going to hide somebody over here. So we need to ensure that they're constantly prepared. And so we publicized something this month, and just thanking the community again for enabling our officers to train in a professional environment. We're very respectful of everything that they have going on there. So we leave no trace when we leave, but some of the photos that we highlighted there obviously is our K9 unit integrated with our tactical unit for the purposes of training. And just coming right out of that, we were unfortunate enough to be involved in an incident on Amgenon, which required an immediate response from all of those units that I'm referring to. So the interoperability of our emergency response team, K9, our negotiators, our incident commanders. So we had to stand up a full incident command response to an incident on Amgenon. And fortunately, we were able to do so as a result of the constant training that goes on here. And so we were able to expeditiously, effectively, with the most minimal amount of force possible, bring a high risk situation to a peaceful resolution almost immediately. There is definitely the optics of it when we respond to those types of situations. People glorify the response, but it is scaled to what the information is that we have, and it is extremely effective. So you can see that incident highlighted in this report as well. The next thing that I'd like to touch on was an event that was undertaken by our community officer, Nick McLean, and he ran a volunteer program called Cram the Cruiser through the holiday season in the Lambton Mall. This involves Nick communicating with the Lambton Mall. It's difficult to go into a retail establishment, the mall itself, and ask people for donations. So we've got a great working relationship with Lambton Mall, whether it's through the Cop Shop, as well as Cram the Cruise that happens in the holiday season. So Nick put this together. He was out there the entire time. He was supported by one of our auxiliary members, Liam Chacon, as well as a number of high school students who were looking for their volunteer hours. So those are children of employees here, and the high schools, as we're all aware, requires them to complete so many volunteer hours. And I know specifically that some of these individuals had a great time while they were out there. They really enjoyed interacting with the public and collecting the donations for the Inn of the Good Shepherd. So another extremely successful event. You can see through the photos that we've displayed there that truckloads essentially is the best way that I can describe the amount of donations that we were able to assist the Inn of the Good Shepherd in acquiring and making a better holiday season for people in our community. And the last thing that I'd like to just touch on is the continued impact that our impact officers are having within the community. They're still playing a critical role. Obviously, they were very front and center through the nice weather when they were interacting with community members, but they haven't slowed down at all, especially with the ongoing Rainbow Park situation. They are constantly there on a daily basis, ensuring that they can offer whatever services they can to the people who are residing there, working for solutions in collaboration with the city, with the county, with any agency that offers support to them. John and Jocelyn are still continuously out there on a regular basis. I just want to note that the unit has successfully facilitated placements for several individuals with family or support networks across Ontario. We've enabled them to access rehabilitation opportunities and rebuild their lives. Those efforts have led to significant outcomes, including sustained sobriety and improved well-being. We asked John and Jocelyn for specific results, and they were able to give us this person, we did this person, we did this. It did involve some travel throughout the province, but we are getting these people to the supports that they need and reconnecting them with family members. With the overflow shelters now being highly utilized because of the cold weather, John and Jocelyn are very much involved in those locations as well, cultivating trust with both the staff and the residents. The relationship building is extremely important in what they're doing. And so subject to any questions, that is the monthly report for this month.
Thank you. Look to the board for questions, comments. Board Member Roberts.
Thank you for the presentation. It's always nice to hear about the community side of things. Rainbow Park, we're down to, I think it's 9 or 10 tents from 69. That's awesome. Yes, the park, the council has decided in March to have the last folks removed. I think the anticipation of no crime will be existing in that area just because we've cleared the park. And all the time I've been saying it, that they're still going to be there. If you take these folks, we can certainly, with the help of the police, say there's still room in the shelters. There's still a place for you at the hospital if you want to change your life. Like, there's things we can do. But we can't force anyone to go anywhere. So they're going to hide somewhere. And if we're clearing the parks, what do you anticipate? Is this going to continue? Because that is their turf, right? That's where they're hanging. That's where they're going to get whatever drugs they need. Their dealers are there. This is their lifestyle that has always been, not just in the last year. Do you anticipate it's still going to continue having crime and the sales of drugs and whatnot in that space, even though Rainbow Park is cleared?
Through the chair, I'll just be blunt. This is an exercise in displacement. The Rainbow Park, clearing Rainbow Park does not solve homelessness in the city of Sarnia. It doesn't solve the addiction issues. It doesn't solve any of those other problems. Any of those individuals, if they choose not to go somewhere and not seek help or supports that are offered, then that's protected rights as Canadian citizens to elect to live their life as they see. And if they are removed from there, then they have to go somewhere. And it may be the case that we actually are preparing for the potential outcome of where this will simply be less concentrated, but in multiple locations across the city. But from a policing perspective, likely the ripples that flow from some of those challenging social issues will be the same. They may just have a different postal code. So the challenges remain for us. The need to have outreach remains. The need for the county to provide accessible and immediate housing remains. And also the importance of city bylaw and that those teams that have been doing an excellent job and working very hard to address those issues. It just means it's going to be dispersed, which frankly will involve more resources because as challenging and difficult as it is for that particular community, and we're certainly very aware of what that community's been through in that spot, the other part of that is that consolidation has eased some of the response, but that's going to change. We take no position on how that goes. This is just operationally what we're going to prepare to adopt to is a dispersed population, which will lead to other perhaps unintended consequences.
And if I can, just to follow up, so you can crash there at night, but you have to be gone in the day. That is not just bylaw, but that's going to pull the police into that, which again is more increased cost for you to be there, correct, for those calls?
Right, it is spearheaded by bylaw, like any kind of response to an encampment at a park, for example, that is essentially the first level of response is bylaw. Bylaw goes, bylaw does whatever bylaw deems fit in that circumstance. We are always available for safety support, that type of thing. And if things do tend to escalate, then of course we can be called. But the police are not the primary responder in these issues. I think that's one of the challenges. We will deal with, of course, the ancillary crimes if they're related, but not everyone has those types of challenges. So that's why we work with our partners so well. And that's impact. One of the greatest benefits we've realized from implementing the impact team several years ago now is the ability to understand the unique needs of each of those people and to be able to say, how we can direct support services to try to get them to that next step and off the street.
Thank you. I hope everyone watches this meeting in the community. Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Gillis.
Yes, and to the team, structural changes are what needs to happen. And it's not at the local level, at the municipal level, but it's beyond us. And we are very well aware of that. Kudos to the upper levels of government that are trying to give us money. Maybe it'll trickle down to us at the city, maybe it won't, but that's hope springs eternal. There's money there that they're trying to give us. But I wanted to focus in on the impact unit itself. And I am hearkening back to my days before when I was on the Police Services Board. We identified mental health and mental health issues at that time as being something that was beyond our capability. It wasn't anything that we were involved in. We knew that the police had a role to play, but really what was that role? And yet, here I've seen the impact team. And when you go to your success stories that you highlighted, Deputy Chief, it really is a good news story for a very bad situation. And the time that you took to send these people out to find things that could be done and should be done and made that happen. You made that happen. And I read stories about how similar successes have happened in Vancouver. And this is the approach that they've taken now, as opposed to what they did 20 years ago. So it's phenomenal to me to see this. It's phenomenal to me to see that the police has incorporated this into the role of community policing, which was in 20 years ago, wasn't even thought about. It was a foreign entity, but now it's part of what we do. So as a result, we have to see the money attached to that come to where the work is being done. So when we go out, and it cannot lie on the taxpayers and municipalities. This is beyond us as well. And so to isolate this and applaud this and see what's happening sends a message to the upper tiers of government that this is working. This is a viable way of handling this issue. It's not the only way, and it can't be isolated to be the only way, but it certainly is having an impact on people's lives that will change their life forever. And that's a good thing. So thank you.
Chief, I wanted to ask so I understand that City Council has approved an eviction, a daytime eviction, and I understand there's 48 hours notice or whatever, but I understand that they were also going to delay until the weather's warmer. So what do you understand what the or are you aware of what the timeline is for this project?
Yeah, there's some conflated terminology as well. Eviction versus enforcement of the Trespass to Property Act, I think, are two different things. Evictions come from landlord tenant and just a different thing. So I think what the perspective is now is the enforcement of the TPA. in alignment with the Hamilton decision, which involves, I think last count was almost 16 individuals, including couples that were still in the park. So those individuals, as early as yesterday, I know John and Jocelyn were working with several of them to seek housing and support. So the goal is to always seek an alternative to enforcement to get people to consider their alternatives. I think the message in the park is now very clear that it is on an egg timer, if you will, in terms of tolerance now, which is positive, motivating for people to seek the supports that they need. But ultimately, we're hoping that everyone will elect to vacate and find alternative housing arrangements for each of them is the goal. Well in advance of any deadline. Deadlines tend to attract noise.
And the role of the police is to support as requested.
It is, and every case for us, it has to be reasonable and objective. So when we go, we assess each individual circumstance. It's not arbitrary. We have to really look at what the circumstances are. Like certainly in weather like we're having right now, to kick someone out of a shelter would be somewhat irresponsible in the absence of having a better place or a safer place to go. So we have to assess all those factors in any type of law enforcement that we pursue.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Just one. There was another motion that was in partnership with the overarching motion. And that is identifying that the shelter systems that we have right now are not working. And what they are doing, they are exposing more communities to violent behavior and criminal behavior that they haven't been exposed to before. So as a part of that motion, that the deadline that was given, as part of that, we wanted to see an improvement or a change into the shelter system itself and actually how it works. And I would think that would be a time for the police service to have invaluable input into that. Because I don't know if you've ever been part of that conversation, but you need to be part of that conversation because you're the ones who are dealing with the unintended consequences of those. So just to make that clear.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to item 11. So that's a facility report. Chief.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to bring to the board's attention some costly emergency repairs that we had to undergo in the building. These repairs were involved in the heating system. We had a routine inspection which identified several safety issues in one of our boilers. That boiler was taken out of commission and had to be replaced on an emergency basis. This is just prior to the current cold snap that we're in. The second boiler, since it was the only one heating the building, its inspection was delayed until the replacement was made. The first boiler was replaced, the second boiler was inspected, and then the second boiler went out of commission for safety infractions, carbon monoxide emissions over limits, and a few other issues. The cost is roughly $150,000, which is $50,000 over our 2025 emergency repair contingency. However, still within, we're going to manage it. I just wanted to highlight to the board that that is an unintended expense and certainly, again, highlights the needs for adequate reserves, which historically are still not in place.
Well, I appreciate the report on this, and even though it's operational in nature, it really does speak to the fact that we are working with the facility that is coming to end of life, and it also speaks to the fact that we're drawing from reserves that don't exist. So very important, I think, for the board to be aware of. Board Member Sebastian.
Yeah, I was just curious. It just makes me connect the dots between our technical audit, which played a role in decisioning to move ahead with work around a new building. And then, of course, the general end of life of other elements of our infrastructure. Do we kind of have a view in terms of when we really start to hit critical mass and some of those repair costs that would potentially start to accelerate some of the building discussions we've been having? Because they haven't been really moving forward, right? So do we have that rolling list of things that we will anticipate will cost us significant dollars?
The chair, we
have a list that is about 5 years old. A complete building assessment was done, and that was part of an assessment done for the entire city, all their facilities. So we have a list that was compiled at that time. So it is somewhat dated, but there, and then in conjunction with the audit that was done by our in-house third-party consultant, we feel that we have a pretty good picture of what the needs will be within the next 2 years.
And anticipating those in our budget, it would be, I think it'd be ideal at our next budget review to actually have a look at what those things are of expected expenses around infrastructure that will become the next 3 to 5 years.
Board Member Ash?
So two things. First off, can you forward that list from 5 years ago to us? I don't think I've ever seen that.
I'll
If you can find,
Dust it
yeah.
yeah.
And
Um,
add 25%.
Yeah. So then I have two questions. How long were we down to one boiler? Because this is a significantly large building to be completed by one boiler. And what areas were affected? Because I'm assuming that some areas had no heat.
So days, the boilers are the redundant system, so it was a matter of days. Kathy's team was able to source.
We're actually currently operating
With one
new
boiler.
Yeah.
and we're waiting for the second replacement unit to come.
Everything's working as long as that one stays standing.
Do we usually use two?
Yes, always.
Okay.
Yeah, there's the primary and then the backup.
Now, things, I will say for the board, like HVAC systems break, like things go end of life. This is a natural progression of all types of equipment, but it also, like, I'll say also, depends on what you buy as well. Quality is a thing in purchasing, and if you buy stuff that'll last, it'll last longer, and if we buy quick repair stuff, it'll last less, and that's how it goes. But to Member Ash's, Vice Chair Ash's point, this is a 24/7 facility. This is not something that shuts down at nighttime. This doesn't shut down on the weekends. We have to be up and running 24/7, 365. So it's critical infrastructure, this building, and having redundant systems that operate and preferably don't both go simultaneously is obviously preferred.
So, Mr.
Sorry, Board Member Ash, do you have a second question?
No.
Okay. Board Member Gill?
Yes, I just wanted to know if there's a preventative maintenance program that goes on, and if not, this, as you said, is a critical asset, but it's an asset of the city, so therefore, one would question, does it not come up under the city's repair? I don't know, that's why I
With the chair, the police service, we manage the facility ourselves through budgeted dollars that we get from the city, and we do implement preventative programs on all of our building systems, more so now than ever before.
But, but you were part of the critical audit that was ordered by the city, was it not?
Yes, that was about 8 years ago, maybe.
So I just wonder if there's not some way that we can work with the facilities manager, that's not his name, but that's not his title. But if we could reach out and see if there's anything, any type of synergies that could occur, especially when we have emergency repairs such as that, especially when the redundancy that was built in is not working or is barely there.
If I may, I'll speak plainly. I think that synergy is what brought us here and why we look for some independent controls over our HVAC system. So Jason Dale's our facilities manager. He works very closely with the inspectors. We've taken much more direct control over ensuring that our facilities are properly maintained. We've changed the inspection providers, and this came through, this was discovered because of some of those rigorous inspections that have been implemented in recent history.
Good, good to know. Thank you.
Okay. So I just want to come back to Board Member Sebastian's earlier comment about the state of our new facility. So I'll report on that briefly right now. So just remind everyone that the board did approve a new facility to be built in 3 phases approximately. So that's on record already. We have had some conversations with the city staff. Our goal is for the 2026 budget estimates to be able to request some funding to begin the first phase. So really the 2 items that we're looking at in the near future would be a site selection process and also acquiring the services of an architect to begin the design of the facility. So, I think we will see some quick movement on those items. The board can expect at the February meeting probably a proposal to acquire the services of an architect. So very exciting. And like I say, we want to be able to, we understand that the city budget estimates have to be given even as early as late August. So we really need to make sure that we're well positioned to put our request in for the first phase. So stay tuned. And I think this report from the chief just highlights the urgency of moving, because we know that a new facility doesn't get built tomorrow. It's a multi-year project. And so we look forward to moving in that direction. So, okay, we'll move on to item 12, and that's going to be a presentation. Look to you, Deputy Chief Constable, to kick us off there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually going to have Staff Sergeant Mike Conner, who oversees our Records and Communications divisions, do a presentation on the Communication Center. The Communication Center, as Mike's going to highlight in this presentation, has undergone a significant transformation over the last couple of years, both in how we operate as well as its physical appearance. And hopefully, if everybody has some time after this meeting is adjourned, we'll go in there and see it for ourselves. But Mike's going to highlight a lot of the changes that have happened in there over the course of the last 2 years.
Okay, thank you. I'm just waiting on share screen to work. It works this time. Sorry for the delay. We're just waiting for the presentation to catch up.
I know, they were waiting for me.
I really dislike these.
It didn't work when you tested it.
Yeah.
Wish I did. Oh,
Well, technology.
Then they should do that.
How long do you need to do that? Yes, Jim, drive in your pocket.
So if you want, Chair, we could do the open forum. I know there's one item, and then we can circle back to the presentation. So let's go to the open forum, item number 13. Board Member Gillis, you had an item for the
I did.
open forum.
So through you to the chief. When you come to a problem of overcapacity within the holding cells, what is the protocol? And then I have a follow-up to that.
In terms of, like if our cells are full,
Yes,
if we would, you have to make a decision. It's basically, you'd have to make an assessment. We have options that are available to us sometimes. Sometimes it may be necessary to release with conditions or look at some different lawful options. Sometimes we're able to double up, although that's never preferred. We basically, the officers would be asked to apply discernment and judgment and adapt to the circumstance.
and so when you say adapt to the circumstance, does that involve transferring any of our people over to the Sarnia jail?
So we would only transfer once they're remanded. So what would happen, police can hold for 24 hours, any person in custody up to. If we don't release, we have to take them for a bail hearing. At a bail hearing, a justice of the peace or a judge, as the case may be, will decide whether that person's going to be remanded into custody or order them released. At that point, if they're ordered into custody of the province, essentially, then we would transport them to a jail facility, and that's where we go.
And that's the question that I have for you in your last statement. Windsor was the site for the building of a super jail. And one of the reasons that they were going to close Sarnia jail was that they would transport over all the bad guys down to the super jail. So here we have the super jail. And was it at capacity? Do we have the ability to transfer people when we have overflow, or is that not an option for us?
Well, I think just from a practical sense, the transport to Windsor would require tremendous amount of resources
Exactly.
that we don't have. So we're very fortunate to have a detention facility here in Sarnia, which is very good for us. We certainly hope that's something that down the road can be built upon and expanded. I don't know the status, that's outside of our wheelhouse, but we're happy it's there. We don't have any interaction with the Windsor jail that I'm aware of.
Really?
at all. So,
Just, it comes back to what the upper levels of government promise and don't deliver on. And that really resonated with me, having been part of the Sarnia jail, maintaining it, keeping it, and to have this happen. It just was quite shocking to me because you put your faith in the systems, that the systems work, and obviously we're not part of that. So it does beg the question, as we're talking about corrections all the way along, the need here for a larger facility at this and a newer courthouse, to be quite honest. So I think from my perspective, that's something that we should pursue because I think it's desperately needed. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Board Member Ash?
Through the chair to Board Member Gillis. I vaguely remember when that went down, but was the promise that was made that we would keep our jail
Yes,
with the option of, should we be overflowed, to go to?
that was the agreement.
That's what I thought it was.
So I was a little surprised that we are not considered part of that.
the jail system can transport wherever they deem fit. That's outside of us. Like certainly
Yes.
the police service doesn't want to transfer our people to 2-3 hour drives away, which creates a whole other issue of security and all those other pieces that will come with that.
And it's good to have that clarification because that's what people think. People think that it is in the police's wheelhouse, but I interrupted them.
No, and that's where I was going as well, because Sarnia Jail is not us.
They're not us.
They're not us. So if we have people to bring there and they're full, what, do they just say no?
That's it. That's where they would have to figure out how they want to deal with those issues. Like that would be theirs to resolve. And I won't speak for them. I don't know what their mechanisms are, but I'm sure they have systems and protocols in place for that. But once remanded, we deliver, and then they're theirs. The custody transfers to the jails.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other thoughts under the open forum? Seeing none, how's our presentation coming along?
Like, you can just.
I wish I knew it off by heart. I could have memorized it. There we go.
Okay.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. PowerPoint.
Okay,
So whoever's running the meeting, he's got it full screen on his, so it should jump.
Sharing the wrong windows.
PowerPoint king.
Let's go off full screen and slideshow.
I'll get my water.
thanks, Chief.
That's why I'm here. Here to help.
Okay, thank you for the delay. Good morning, everybody, members of the board, SLT team, Sarnia Police, and other members that are with us today. My name's Mike Connor. I'm currently Staff Sergeant in charge of our communications unit as well as our records bureau. I'm here today to kind of showcase what is happening in our communications unit over the last year or so. I can tell you that I have almost 26 years experience, mostly in investigations. And about a year and a half ago, Chief Davis came to me and asked me, or kind of told me, that you're being transferred to the communications unit as well as the it's kind of deer in headlights, but here I am. I started crawling and I'm slowly walking now, so it's been good. I just want to touch upon what we are in our in the operations center, specifically our communications unit. We are considered a 911 primary PSAP, which is a public safety answering point. Simply, it is a call center that answers emergency calls, that being 911, for police, fire, and ambulance. So we are as it stands now, the 911 PSAP for all the city of Sarnia. Point Edward, as well as recently last year, we took over St. Clair Township. So whenever 911 is called and these jurisdictions, including our city, the people on our unit handle the calls, and if need be, have to downstream any calls, for instance, the OPP or EMS, they are transferred. So I'm going to touch upon what professional communicator is. We have approximately 25 communicators, dispatchers that work in our unit, including full-time and part-time employees. As the chief already mentioned, part of his discussion, we work 24/7, 365 days a year. We handle all sort of calls, and I'll get into a few more stats in the next couple slides, but I'll break it down for you. There is 3 positions within the room. The first position I'll speak to is the call taker. They're responsible for answering all 911 emergency, non-emergency, as well as administrative calls, as well as provide CPIC information to officers on the front line. Our next position is the police dispatcher. They're all considered dispatchers, but it's defined as the police dispatcher in the room. This person takes all the critical information from the call taker that is transferred over through via our CAD system. And all this information, for example, a call that comes in, it has to be broadcast to the officers. They broadcast all this information into the field, keep officers updated until the call is finalized. They also monitor all radio, CAD, and I'll get into what our MPS mobile for public safety is all about in a couple slides, and mainly ensure officer safety 24/7. Third position is the fire dispatcher. They provide dispatching for currently 14 municipal fire departments within Lytton County, including the city of Sarnia, as well as assist with answering 911 calls. And then finally, our spare position. We didn't have this in the past, and we have filled it the last few years, which is great. They come in and cover the peak periods, and right now they're scheduled from 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. So we have that extra coverage. We also have lunch coverage for during the day and at night. So at any given time in a 24-hour period, we have at least 9 individuals working within the room.
I need to interject something for a second. Sure. Each one of these positions is interchangeable. So just because you're in the dedicated call answering position doesn't mean that you can't jump on the radio. They have all 4 individuals who are working in there have access to the same information, the same radio channels. They just kind of operate in their own little worlds. So if the fire is going on, the fire dispatcher is handling it, but the other communicators can hear exactly what's going on and offer assistance. So they're all working in conjunction with one another.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. They work as a team. So at moments of pure chaos, which does happen in the room, I've learned that last year and a half, they all work as a team collectively and define their role. And although they do have defined roles. Just quickly, briefly cover off, these are the municipalities we cover. There's 27 stations in totals, as I mentioned, 14 municipalities, and it is quite a lot. We recently took over Walpole Island, was the last one a few months back, as well as California. So we are busy, and I'll show you some numbers. Once it pops up, we have some 2023 statistics that I pulled. As you can see, we had over 36,000 911 emergency calls, 462,000 total calls for service. And you can see the numbers for Sarnia fire calls. They have changed a little bit in 2024. I noted that we took over in June of 2023, St. Clair Township Fire, as well as Lambton Shores. So they were originally onboarded mid-year in 2023. So the numbers you're going to see spike a little bit. So on our next slide, you can see our 911 calls went down a little bit. You have to remember that 2023 was also COVID, so we have spiking calls. And also, I think some of our online reporting might have jigged these numbers a little bit, but essentially the 911 calls and total calls for service are fairly the same. Are starting fire calls. I don't know if I just lost the presentation.
Could you distinguish between the total calls for service and the 911 calls?
Yeah, so the total calls for service, we calculated, they actually come in and bring on like 3 or 4 lines. And I had to go to our IT manager to pull all the calls, so he was able to track like the non-emergency administrative and 911 calls.
Get us 911 and the non-emergency, and they're all answered in the same location. So the communicators answer, when the phone rings in the Sarnia Police Service, it's being answered in the room behind you right now. Yeah. There is the automated service. If you know the extension of the person you are trying to reach, you can enter it now. Nobody knows the extension of who they want to reach, even internally, and it'll all flow through essentially the switchboard if you want to give it another
Well,
definition.
it looked like you were getting about 500 calls a day.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna touch upon that. Okay. I have some numbers for free at the bottom. So you can see, I'm just gonna show that the number of Sarnia fire calls went up to about 275. And then the number for total fire calls, because now we're taking care of the entire county, was over 1,300. So we're quite busy in that room, and everybody does a phenomenal job keeping up. So I crunched some numbers, and on average, about 100 911 calls received every day, 365 days a year. And the numbers are actually closer to about 440 total calls for service per day.
The CAD events, is that police, that's limited to the police calls?
Yeah, they're called computer automated dispatch events, and we have SA numbers. So any call for service that an officer has to respond, or there's an incident attached to that, those are the numbers there.
And that was the almost 35,000.
Yes.
number, right? Okay.
Question two? Sorry. Mr. Chair. Have you had any feedback from the communities that are now moving to that were into before?
Yeah, so as far as speaking to our partners, we consider them partners. We're working in conjunction with them. We meet fairly regularly. And so far, so good. A lot of the fire departments were down at CAC, down in Wallsburg,
Right.
through EMS.
Exactly.
And I've been told that they weren't getting the type of product that they're now receiving. We're still working out some bugs with our mapping and things like that, but that's on the agenda for this year. We're getting a priority.
That's another good news story.
So just to jump into this, we have made some physical as well as some technological changes over the past year or so, the past couple of years, and I'll just briefly cover that. Sure, some people are aware in this room, but we had a significant renovation in 2024. In the old, I do have some photos just to show you some comparison. Before the renovation, we had only 4 workstations, 1 supervisor's office in a very confined area. Obviously, the 3 positions, the call taker, dispatch, and fire, years ago, that's all we had. We didn't have a spare position, even though we had a 4th desk. It's quite cramped and dated, and there's only 1 access point into a very small room. It was only about maybe 600 square feet. It was a major need of an update. So 2024 renovation, I give credit to everybody in that room. It's like living through a home renovation. Everybody had to work through this renovation, and they did an amazing job. It was quite stressful. It was loud at times, but they were very dedicated in their room, and the phones ran. The calls were coming in. So a large portion of the wall was removed. We got new lockers, flooring, kitchenette, lighting, and the washroom's updated. In addition, we also, it's now called our operations center. We added 4 new cubicles for record staff, including our CPIC staff, and added 2 new offices, including mine and our civilian manager. So I now physically, I'm in the operations center. Space is obviously more open, approximately 1,500 square feet. And the plan is to add 1, possibly 2 call takers over the next year, as well as a new shift supervisor. So here are just a couple photos to show you how it used to look. Waiting for the lag.
Just to comment on one of the things that Mike brought up there was that we were able to bring some of our record staff into the operations center. And what we call it is our operational records. So the officers are doing the work on the street, communicating constantly with the communicators or the dispatchers. But there's also some paperwork, for lack of a better term, that falls in line with it when we're executing search warrants, when we want to add stolen vehicles to the system that the police officers have access to. That's kind of a records function, and we wanted to integrate the two units together. And by virtue of the renovation, we were able to bring them into the same room. So now we're not walking paper, literally walking paper from one room to the other side of the building to the other. We're actually being able to interact with each other on a real-time basis.
So there's just a couple photos showing how kind of confined the room was, a little bit darker. And the next couple slides will show you what has been done. They say a picture speaks 1,000 words, but if anybody would like a tour to come in, any members of the board, you're more than welcome to do so. So you'll see here that on one angle, it's more open. You see the 4 cubicles on the left-hand side in the background there. And then on the right-hand side, this is how the room looks. You see on the right-hand side that the wall, a large portion of the wall is taken down. I think the staff are quite happy with the renovations, and it's more open and clean. And this is just another shot of walking into the operations center, showing the communications unit in the background. We have 2 call taker desks ready for some new staff eventually. And on the right side, there's a new kitchenette, new lockers. So this obviously fell in line with our services commitment for continuous improvement, for modernization, implement efficiencies, as well as address work demands for our employees. Now our operations center is clean, modern, it provides a more comfortable workspace that supports our communications team and record staff, and also accommodates future growth within our organization. So I'm just going to get into briefly, with the time I have, what's on the horizon. So everybody's heard of next generation 911. It is coming. And I'm just going to speak to that kind of high level points and what it really is. So our legacy system 911 has been around for years. Or I think the first 911 call placed in Canada was 1972. It has been a very robust system. It is a success story. However, it's been stretched to its limits as far as the advancements in technology. So next gen NG911 has been in the making since about the year 2000, so over 20 years. So now it's finally coming to fruition. We had some delays during COVID and things like that, but it's the go live date is coming in March of this year. And we are doing a lot of work in the background with what our vendor and building our solution for NG911. So obviously we needed a better system to access emergency care, and this is across Canada. So North America, United States are a little bit further ahead of us. We're moving from completely analog copper phone lines to digital, completely digital, secured internet IP-based network through a system called EZINet. NG911 will allow PSAPs to receive eventually. So we're going to be doing, once we go switch over to our go live date, this will be coming up right away, but we will have the ability in the future, near future, to accept text. That this includes live text. So if somebody wants to get a hold of 911 instead of calling on their cell phone, they can text to 911, and the dispatchers, the communicators, are actually going to be able to see those texts live coming in, like word for word. Eventually, we're going to be able to have with the new digital technology, we're going to be able to share images from citizens and as well as video during an emergency call. It'll make it possible for additional details to receive for any emergency situation, make safer, faster, and more informed emergency responses. As I mentioned, for example, citizen will be able to send photos for an accident, and as well as provide medical information available for first responders even before they get on scene. Our current system was never intended to receive calls and data from these new emerging digital technologies, hence the changes needed. And finally, communication staff will now be better able to determine location of the actual callers. It's more pinpoint versus kind of a triangulation between towers, which only gives you meters or 50 meters, 100 meters of where someone is, for instance, a missing person. So it's more pinpointed. And as mentioned, the go live date is coming up in March of this year. However, it might be extended. The CRTC may be sending out some notices with some extensions, but we're preparing for March. I'm going to move into a couple other quick topics and talk about our MPS system within the mobile workstations and all the cruisers. It is a system essentially that marries up with our CAD system in dispatch. We also have MR, which is the mobile response for just application on the officer's cell phones. A lot of the special units use that. It's very similar, just on the cell phone. Again, this provides computer automated dispatch to officers using these mobile devices. Allows for quicker transfer of information of our from our operation centers to the officers and vice versa. The use of this technology has now changed how communicators, officers, as well as supervisors within our organization operate. Our team now has better capabilities for monitoring calls, for service, officer availability, as well as use of GPS technology. Dispatchers now take up less airtime. So that is one of the biggest changes with the use of NPS. However, now they have to monitor the screens. So for example, an officer marks themselves out on a vehicle stop. They can do that using the tablet within their car. Dispatchers can see that. They can run all their own people. They can use all the systems, including niche RMS, CPIC, MTO, application called Shield Basic in their cars, and it's working. It's quite successful. We were in major need of this improvement. I came here 15.5 years ago, and from another service that was not Halton Regional. It was in the GTA, but we had this technology. It was in Toronto, and we had the technology over 20 years ago. So,
Just a question. So the area of the city that I live in has a notorious cellular connection problem. And meaning we actually cannot complete a cell phone call unless we are connected to a Wi-Fi service. So how does that impact both the members who are in vehicles reliant on cellular to make the MPS systems work? Or is that networked through a different method? So we don't have good cell service in the county, let alone this area of the city. It's actually dangerous. But.
So there has been some bugs, and sometimes we call it drifting. Sometimes like the GPS or like the systems will drift, and luckily we have an IT department that fixes these issues. But for the most part, we haven't had any major issues. And I know exactly what you're talking about. Where I live, also we have major cell phone issues, and I have to use Wi-Fi calling.
Yeah.
Follow up with that, where we live right here, or where we are right here. Lots of times there's roaming that happens with the cell phones. So how do you get, and it's quite frequent. So how do we overcome that anomaly that we've enjoyed for so many years since cell phone came in?
Through Mr. Chair. So fortunately, by virtue of where we are geographically, we are aware of the issues that you are highlighting. And we have negotiated with the cellular company so that any roaming charges that are captured, then I don't want to speak out of turn here, and Kathy can correct me if I'm wrong, but we've worked it out with the cellular company so that it's not like your phone bill, your personal bill. When you catches a tower, you call immediately and say these few $100s need to come off.
Yes.
We don't face those same challenges. And just for your point there, we also have the radio system like this. So if the MPS system, if the car is glitchy, if it's failing, if technology is there, we can always revert to the radio. So if the officer is receiving information via their mobile workstation and it's not, if it's stalled, if it's not all there, if they think that there's more but they can't make it work, they can always pick up the radio, always have connection with the communication center, and then they could just revert back. And by what Mike has highlighted there with the fact that there's a lot more open air in Sarnia now, so we're able to communicate a lot more effectively because we're not constantly on there doing every single thing that's happening. So there are fail safes in place. We do experience the same Like if you're at Murphy and Lakeshore Road, you're
Right.
probably not gonna be able to make that connection on the network that we're on, but we can always get the information we need verbally.
And just to add to that, whenever officers do have issues with their workstations, they come back into the station to get a new card and
Oh, okay.
they try when it's available. So I'm just going to quickly move along for the essence of time. This is just an example of what our dispatchers see. I just took a couple of screenshots within the room. So on the left-hand side, this is the screen where a call taker would input a call, address, phone numbers, name, situation. Then it'd be transferred over to the dispatcher, who would populate, and if they're still on the line, the dispatcher will constantly get the updates, which will be transferred to the officers. And then the right-hand side, it just shows the details. I had to black some information out for confidentiality or redact. It just shows the location, the priority, event type, event number, time the officers were on the call, and so on. And down below, sort of the same thing, also which officers are available. So you'll see on the next slide that our MPS screens are very similar, a little bit different color, but they're the same. So all the same information that the dispatchers have in their CAD system mirrors up with their MPS. So
It's pretty cool to watch it.
So obviously, with all these physical and technological changes, we're now changing how we conduct business within our operations center. And I just want to highlight an example that we've been really trying to push within our officers. The chief has spoken to this to us a number of times, and it does make sense. So commencing in 2024, we're ensuring that all communicators, officers, and supervisors are capturing and using the proper call types in our CAD system. The goal essentially is to marry up this information that's captured within our niche records management system. This information is gathered not only in our analytics, but it's reported to Statistics Canada every year. This ultimately drives our organization's strategic plan. So finally, I'm just going to touch upon a couple success stories. A lot of you in this room are aware of it. I could talk we've had a lot of successful calls that happen within our service and within the communications unit in the last little while. But in January 2023, everybody's aware of what happened at Fairwinds Lodge. It was a multi-station fire. It was called out, police, EMS, mutual aid, Port Huron, Sarnia Transit, Ontario Fire Marshal's Office. Its command was set up and the Department of Control Groups was called in. 120 seniors were evacuated in the middle of the night. No loss of life or injuries. There were numerous 911 calls that came in when that fire started. And our unit, our communication unit, handled every single one. Even after the fire started, there were still calls coming in, 911 calls coming in after, because members within, the residential area could see the flames going up and fire departments didn't have it under control. So it was quite chaotic. It was all hands on deck, and ultimately led to a very, very successful outcome. And finally, the other success story that our unit had to, not only our unit, but the officers and the unit had to handle was the storm that occurred on July 20th. Major storm, 125-kilometer winds, caused multiple downed trees, power outages, road closures across the city. I touched upon that. I had some friends at the Sarnia Golf and Curling Club who were at a tournament, and they had to be taken off, of course, pretty fast, because 150 trees came down that particular day. But before we wrap up, there was that incident. There was over 200 911 calls received, just the 911 calls alone. There was an additional 60 fire calls for service, and a total of 500 calls approximately were handled over a very short period of time. This is in a 4 to 5 hour period, which is very chaotic in that room. Luckily, we had the person that came in for some lunch relief. People stayed, as well as the supervisor, and it was handled. They had to make contact with Blue Water Power, all the other services to take care of these trees, to clear the roads, and they did a great job. So, and I'm just going to say the last thing, Bell Canada actually called in and asked, like, are you guys okay? Like, what is going on? They didn't know we had a storm.
And that kills me.
You know, they thought
They're
like,
super busy. Let's call
Yeah,
Stephanie and answer the
so-
question why.
it was, quite crazy, but I've talked to everybody that was working that particular day, and it's just amazing job of teamwork, and, they got through it, so they do it every day, so. I just want to wrap up. This happened, our grand opening in early December. I was not there. I was on a course, but there's our deputy and some of our record staff, including our communication staff and our IT manager. So we had a ribbon cutting, and so far so good. And it's a great new environment physically in there. It's improved, as I mentioned, employee well-being, and it's really been a great opportunity for myself to work in there, work with some great people. So anyway, thank you for your time. If you don't have any other questions.
Okay, thank you. Yes, go ahead.
If it's permissible, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to interject with just a couple other points and highlight some of the stuff that Mike said there. I was actually in the communication center during the storm, just by virtue of the fact that I received the notification on my phone that there was a storm. I looked outside and lo and behold, there was. So I went downstairs, and I could not provide enough compliments for the effectiveness of the staff in there. The phone, like I'm glad that Mike highlighted there was 500 phone calls received about the storm during the storm while they're trying to dispatch 14 different fire services. For every downed power line, you don't get one phone call because people don't communicate and say, hey, did you call 911? Everybody calls. And so it's the able to triage the information that they have to prioritize the events, but also to know that they're talking about the same events. And so you can hear the communication, not just between the dispatcher and the caller, but amongst the team that's in there to be able to go and pick up one another that, hey, they've already called hydro for that event. So now it's just constant communication. So it's actually, to use the term chaotic would not be complimentary to what they do in there, but they were totally effective. Just a couple other things really quick. When somebody calls 911 in an emergency, and you often see this, maybe if you're watching the TV shows or something, the communicator is able to communicate with their partners, obtain all the information from you, and continuously talk with a complainant while the police are being dispatched, while the police are receiving the information. So oftentimes we'll hear, just get the police here. And you'll hear our communicators say they're on their way, they're coming, continue to talk to me, because they're communicating through the technology that they've had provided. So you don't have to say, hold the line, and then get on the radio and call the police and then come back to the line. So we're able to communicate effectively like that. And just the last thing that I'll comment on is Mike mentioned that the data control and quality is very important to us. And so I think that you're well aware that you're seeing the product that comes out of this organization now is far different than it has been in the past. And now we're teaching our people to understand what wasn't important in the past is extremely important. And so the way that we used to do things has changed. And for some people, it's simple because they didn't really know the old way of doing things. But for some people, it's challenging as we continue to move and progress forward to have them understand that what they're putting into this computer system now, we actually look at later. It's not just a transactional, hey, we've got to break and enter at this address, go deal with it, and off it goes. We were looking for a ton of information that's contained within there so that we, as a senior leadership team, can make more substantiated decisions with information that we have.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Just a comment. I mean, I'm using this word, this is my word today, phenomenal to me, because I am overwhelmed with everything that has happened in just a very short time frame. And to create, when you see an opportunity, you take it. When you see an opportunity that renovations need to be done, you don't just focus in on that one thing. You took that opportunity to say, how can we do more with this? Can we create efficiencies here within the system itself or within our for our employees as well, but not just for today, for what's coming at us tomorrow. So, good on you. This is it. This is what people want to see. Really want to see that, and because they experience you every day. I remember the storm right behind my house. I live on the trail where several trees came down, and I was getting phone calls all over the place and texts and everything because people wanted to know if I was going to come and cut their grass that day or whatever. And totally oblivious to the fact that we had had a major storm because they were calling from a different part of the city. And it was super chaotic. So just in my own little house, it was chaotic. But here, it must have been overwhelming. And yet, the professionalism that everyone displayed was just amazing to me. Just wonderful. Can't say enough good things.
Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the comments, and thanks, Mike, for the presentation. And I certainly echo the compliments to Deputy Vansickle, Staff Sergeant Connor, and the entire communications and records team for the tremendous amount of change that they've gone through as part of our ongoing modernization of the Sarnia Police Service. I just wanted to add, just from a different perspective of what you saw here today, like that's some excellent work getting done, but behind the scenes of that, you can see why infrastructure is critical, why technology has changed. It's not the 80s, like a laptop doesn't exist by itself. These MPS systems require servers, and the radios require transmission towers, all these different pieces. This building, just to tie to the facility, we have no server room here. We are literally overflowed into the hallway just to get enough equipment. These are the types of constraints that as a police organization, we are past the capacity of this facility to provide policing in a modern era. I would also point out that our civilian communicators do an outstanding job, and you've heard it said, I've heard it said multiple times in different media sources, and certainly from some of our civic leaders, that the Sarnia Police has a number of administrators, and this comment comes up all the time, and I'll just go back. 19 administrators was listed as the Sarnia Police growth. Of that 19 that was reported in March of last year, 12 of them are the dispatchers you saw in the work they do today. The other, there's the chief, there's 2 deputies, the other 5 are the directors of finance and HR, manager of fleet facility, IT, property stores at the time. So this is not a growth in administration. This is a growth in necessary civilian operational support that is a byproduct of trying to run a modern organization. And if for those that have never seen it or run one, it's a very different environment in a modern infrastructure than it is for in days gone by, which served its purpose in the past. No one's disputing that. But as we move into the future and prepare for the future, it certainly requires a much different perspective, a much different skill set, and certainly different resourcing requirements.
Thank you for that comment. I had a question for Staff Sergeant or Deputy Chief. You talked a little bit about capacity, with those 2 events that we had, the number of calls coming in. And I'm thinking about, everyone has a cell phone now. And I'm thinking like a situation where you maybe have an active shooter in a, school or a place where there's a lot of people, and 1,000 people call 911 all at the same time. Like how would, how do the operators distinguish between, because they would obviously want to talk to the people that have the most information, as opposed to someone that just says, yeah, I heard some shots or something like that. Like how do you process all that?
Well, I'd say first of all, they're trained. We have a lot of experience in that room. Luckily, we haven't had to deal with, and I'd say it's never going to happen here in the city. But I can tell you, from my experience being in there a year and a half, just the ability to come in and care every day to do the job, and there's some high level people in that room, high intellect. They know what they're doing, and they do it day in, day out. So if a situation just like the 2 examples I used, if that does happen, it will get handled. So if anybody in this community, and I know it sounds so cliche, if you call 911, the phone's going to get answered.
Will the next generation 911 help with that?
It's going to be more like streamlined. Yeah, there's some other, I didn't want to touch upon it today. There's some other stuff happening in the background, some more use of some technology that we might be implementing, but yeah, there's a lot of some tools out there that we're going to be introducing to the world as well. So
I would think the texting option is very significant, especially, God forbid, in a situation that you 2 brought up. Don't do that again. Or even more so than that, but domestic violence cases. I think that's where you're really going to see it implemented, right? Because it's easier to shoot off quick text.
is.
Colorado pizza.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Again, getting back to the old, where the majority of calls coming into the service are coming from cell phones.
Yeah.
It has been for years. So I know that some people still have a landline at home, but we have to get to move with technology. So that's why there's an improvement.
Why are you laughing at me for?
I'm not laughing at you. The only last comment I'll make on the technology and the implementation of the next generation 911 is you can order skip the dishes and know where it is and when it's going to arrive at your house and when it's arrived. But if you call 911, we've got to use tower to try to triangulate, and we don't know exactly where people are.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the most monumental change.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the informative presentation. We've already done open forum, so it's not on the agenda, but normally at the end we do a closed meeting report. So in our closed meeting, we will have an HR update. We'll have the annual complaint summary. We'll have an update on contract negotiations, and we'll be looking at the chief's performance goals. So with that in mind, can I look for a motion to adjourn to closed session? Board Member Ash and Board Member Sebastian. All those in favor? Okay, we're adjourned. And we don't have media physically present, so maybe we'll just have a 5-minute break. Can we, you had talked about perhaps a tour of the communication center. Can we do that after the closed?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I don't think our close is going to be very long, so.
No problem.